Hello and welcome to this Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree boss tier list. This tier list is going to be primarily based on the boss's difficulty when going through the game. I know I haven't uploaded too much Elden Ring content to the channel. I did a couple of live streams back when the game first came out, but I have played through the DLC twice now. I've been playing like 8 hours a day since it came out, so for about a week. Played through the game twice with 2 different builds, and I feel like I have a good opinion and a good grasp on a lot of these bosses. The main point I'm going to be making with these bosses is my first experience fighting them, because obviously second experience you have, learned a couple of moves, so I'm going to be placing them mostly based on my first time fighting them. This is, just to keep in mind, from someone that does like to play challenge runs of Elden Ring for fun, and I have about 1,000 hours in Elden Ring, beating the game upwards of 30 to 40 times, so I have got a lot of experience with the base game. This is going to be, an experienced player's point of view in playing through the game. We're going to go through them in order, I think, of the alphabetical order they are presented to us in this tier list. We have a couple categories here. We have, there's one in particular that's going to be going in this category for sure. I don't know if there's going to be any others, but there's one that comes to mind that will be going into this category that I'm sure many of you will agree with. And then we have the obvious, very hard, average, easy, and then trash for things that are kind of just trash mobs or things that I didn't quite understand why they were bosses. There were a couple of mini-bosses in this DLC that I think maybe didn't need to be there, and they will end up in this tier for sure. Obviously, with this being a boss tier list, there is going to be spoilers inside of this tier list. If there is things that you have not fought yet and you want to remain spoiler-free, I do not recommend watching this just yet. Add it to the watch later or anything, because I'm going to be talking a lot about the bosses. I'm going to be probably bringing up their movesets, and if you don't want to know that stuff, I would advise you to click off now, because you can only have a blind playthrough against these bosses once, and it is a valuable experience. Do not take it for granted. With that said, though, let's get into the first of the bosses. The first up is the Ancient Dragon Man, who is a pretty weird enemy to add as a boss, as it's added directly after you fight him as an invader on the way down, which didn't really make sense to me because it's basically just an immediate repeat. So while I wouldn't quite put it in the tier of trash mob, it's not like the kind of enemy that you're going to see multiple times throughout the playthrough, it's just twice. I do think he ends up being a pretty easy boss. He's just a guy at the end of the day. The weapon art on the Dragon Great Katana is very cool, and it can do a lot of damage, especially if you get to him early. I ended up getting to him as one of my later bosses. I went pretty much directly to Dancing Lion, Galana, Mesmer was my path. I went Legacy Dungeon in my first playthrough, so I did not get to him till much later. In my experience, he was pretty easy. He can be poise broken. A lot of regular human enemies can just be ran at with a running attack and they'll stumble. He didn't seem much different, so that is the experience with, a melee weapon. Maybe if you're a caster, he might catch you out with the weapon or not when you're trying to cast or something. You might be bumping him in difficulty a little bit, but for the most part, pretty easy fight. Senesax. Senesax was a weird one. I did not expect to see another Lanciax clone, basically. Senesax, again, I fought pretty late into the playthrough, so I did have a lot of blessings at this point. He didn't really have anything super new compared to just Lanciax, so to me, he felt like a boss that I had already fought before multiple times. He is in water, so he does have that, lightning negation on you, so you do take the extra damage. He hits very hard, but that's about it. I fought him on horseback and just ran by him on a horse, did one hit, one little swoop on the horse, continued running, and I did that over and over until he was dead. So for me, pretty easy fight. I can see him fighting with a lot more strength if you are not fighting him on the horse. Bale. Curse you, Bale. Bale was great. Bale was incredible. I love this fight. This was a good rivalry to Placidusax. Placidusax is one of my favorite bosses of all time in all FromSoft games because I love the sound cutout in his big, stab into the ground nuke attack. Bale was on par with that for me easily, maybe better. His phase transition, absolutely beautiful. And he will absolutely mess you up. He, at the very least, goes into very hard. He is a very tough fight. I especially had trouble with his bite attack, where he does his grab, that thing felt so off to me, because my initial reaction with a lot of grabs, I was kind of going into it with the mindset of the hippo, where you can roll past the bite. If you roll past the bite on Bale, a lot of times he'll get stuck on his body and his bite will grab you anyway, which makes that fight real tough. Also, his giant screw you phase 2 fire blast from the sky, multiple lightning balls, other fire blast from the sky that you have to roll through, took me a lot of attempts to learn. I got there, don't get me wrong, I got there, but very, very tough. I would also like to say, I did end up doing him without the summon. I know there is an NPC summon for the fight. I personally don't like to play with spirit summons or NPC summons, so all of this tier list is being done as just a guy with a sword and shield. That was my playthrough. It was quality Nagakiba with like 50 strength, 50 dex, 60 vigor, 50 endurance. That was kind of the build, and it worked out for the most part pretty well. There was a couple bosses, which we'll get to later, which destroyed me, but for most bosses, pretty good. Bale was definitely one of the tougher ones, though. Black Knight Erdtree. This is a trash mob. This is just a trash mob with a weapon up. This fight was a little bit underwhelming. I do like the Ash of War that he drops. I believe this is the one that dropped the Ash of War Crystal Knight, where he gets his twin blades and he spins round and round. But they're backstabbable, they fall down. If you're using a heavy weapon, they can be poise broken pretty easily. Pretty regular enemy that you'll see a lot of throughout the DLC. Black Knight Garu, also kind of the same. Nothing too crazy. This is the one I think that dropped the Black Steel Grey Shield. He is also a regular enemy that you will fight a lot. At this point in the game, by the time that you get to him, you've probably fought one much earlier at like the very starting church in the start of the DLC. Nothing particularly special about him other than that, you know, don't get guard counted from him is pretty much all you have to do. You can backstab him pretty easily when he does a shield slam. Nothing too crazy. Black Jail Knight. Black Jail Knight is interesting. I've seen a lot of people get wrecked by Black Jail Knight when once I'd beaten my playthrough, I went back and saw some people going and fighting him. And I didn't fight him until I had got Blessing level 3 was my first thought when I entered the DLC was I need to go explore things rather than go into boss dungeons. So I didn't come in completely naked against him, essentially, and I didn't find him to be too crazy. I didn't really get hit by his big old crossbow attack. His weapon art is not a true combo. You can roll away from the second part if you're just mashing roll. So I think I'm personally going to put him in easy, but I do also think if I had fought him at Blessing level 0, I would have put him at an average fight. But for me, on my first playthrough and subsequent playthroughs, he has seemed rather easy. Chief Bloodfiend. Also going into easy. To get to this guy, you have to go through a whole pool of these enemies, which I did fight all of them, and by the time that I had fought all of them, I was like, okay, I kind of get it. And he didn't do anything that special. He has definitely a longer hit combo. He has like some 4-hit combos, but like he's still just a regular enemy to me that I did not find super difficult. Commander Gaius. This guy was tougher. This guy was tougher. I ended up doing Shadow Keep pretty early, at like Blessing level 6 or 7. He was definitely a fight that I have tried 2 different ways now. I have tried fighting him on horseback, and I have tried fighting him just melee man-to-man. Horseback for me was terrible. I hated horseback. I felt like Torrent got bonked immediately, died immediately, and then you're stuck doing that really long animation where you're like, as you get up from the ground, and that entire animation takes so long that this boss is going to kill you. He also has like a crazy 7 or 8 hit combo attack where his horse just not horse, boar flails with like head swipes, and he does some pokes in the middle. That attack is also very, very awkward. However, he does have one very, very glaring weakness, which is why I will not put him higher than hard, and that is you can just stay behind him. As soon as you are behind him, the only attack you really have to worry about is pretty much the boar's kick. As soon as I got behind him by like his back left or back right, I felt like he could no longer do anything to me. Especially back left, considering his sword is on his right-hand side. If you're at his back left side, the only thing that can realistically reach you is if you slightly misposition and the boar kicks at you, or if he manages to get his boar to swipe his head up at you. They're the only 2 attacks you really have to worry about. Phase 2 didn't seem too much different. There's a lot of magic stuff in it, but honestly, it didn't seem too much different in Phase 2 than Phase 1 on either of my playthroughs. I would say that he is a hard boss with a couple of hitbox wonkiness things, but with his boar charge especially, which is the thing that I've seen most people complaining about having the weirdest hitbox, you can mount Torrent and dismount Torrent if you're in single player to get the really long horse dismount iframes while the boar charges through you, and you will be fine. So, there you go. Next up, we have Count Ymir. I don't know if I would count this as a boss, but I guess it is. Mother of Fingers. I don't know what this person does. I jump attack them in a corner and they die. Both times. I've not seen anything other than like maybe one of the glintstone nail spells come out from him before he dies. I don't think he does much. I could be wrong. My third playthrough, I might go in with like a magic build. He might be really magic resistant and he might mess me up. But at the moment, I don't understand why he's a boss, really. He seemed very, very weak. Although I did also head to the church a lot later in the game. If you were to do this quest line very early, maybe a much tougher fight. But again, I can't give my experience on things that I haven't experienced. So for me, pretty easy. Cursed Labyrinth. This, I think, is bugged. I'm going to be honest, every time I've done this fight, I've been like, ooh, he's gone invisible. Cool. And then he just pops out and just does regular melee attacks and feels weaker than the very first enemy of the DLC up on the graves when you first enter the DLC and walk through the gate. So, to me, this is probably the weakest enemy in the entire DLC. I think he's meant to stay invisible at times. I have never had him be invisible. Every time I've ever fought him, which is now 3 times because I'm starting my third playthrough, every single time, very easy fight. Seems like he has less health than the regular enemy variant. I don't get it. I really don't. The Dancer of Rana. I'd be willing to put this higher than trash, but not higher than easy. I feel this way with most humanoid enemies. You can just running poke them. Or jump attack them and they'll stumble. Unless they have like super hyper armor. But if you just wait for them to finish a combo, jump attack them, back up, come back in. Once they've done their attack, jump attack them again. Very, very simple fight. Nothing crazy. Very cool weapon. Very cool weapon. I do like the unending dance. But overall, the fight was not very difficult. Right. The Death Knight. The Death Knight's going into average, which I feel is somewhat appropriate. I think this fight is decently hard. I think it will take most people an attempt or two, and that's about it. I don't think it's one that you'll get stuck on for a super long time, but I do think that you need to be very, very wary of this guy's grab. In fact, I'm putting both of these at the same place because I feel the same way about both the Death Knights. I didn't feel like there was too much difference between the two of them for me. It's basically just the grab is a huge heal. It is a massive, massive heal, and if you do get grabbed, it does a lot of damage, and he will be healing up a lot. Which, if you're taking trades in this fight for any reason, that heal is going to be massive for him. However, he is backstabbable. His combos do tend to end with him leading, you know, with like a little bit of a get up animation. Doesn't have too much moveset variety in terms of what I have fought, at least. His moveset seems pretty limited. I do like the big old lightning throw. I like the blink ball. Overall, definitely my favorite mini-boss, for sure. Absolutely my favorite mini-boss in the DLC. Not the most difficult. I love the fact that in this tier list it's called Deathrite Bird Buffed. Yeah, that thing messed me up a couple times. That thing sucks. The tick damage on his Ghost Flame is so high. He is ultimately just a Deathrite Bird from the base game. There is nothing new as such with this that I fought. He still does the same thing where he'll like back up and throw the spears down. He'll still do his Ghost Flame explosions. Normal Deathrite stuff. He's just really, really strong, and he will hit really hard with that Ghost Flame tick if you get caught in it, which it's not too hard to just roll slightly wrong and be like, I've got away from the explosion, and then the fire tick absolutely annihilates you for like 700 health a tick. Possibly easier now that the patch went out to make the blessings give you a little bit more defense. Maybe it's not quite as bad, but I still think that was one of the harder fights in my playthrough. Demi-Human Queen Mariga. This is just a Demi-Human Queen. I feel the same way in the base game. These enemies just aren't strong. I don't really remember the fight being anything different than a normal demi-human queen, like Margot and all of the others in the base game. Very similar. The hardest part about this fight is honestly clearing out the ads around her without aggroing her so that you don't have to deal with ads in the fight. That's just the way it is. Demi-human Sword Master Ons, also known as Yoda. Yoda will catch you off guard when you first enter that boss room fog. Let me tell you, my first time fighting him, I made the mistake of taking a moment when I walked through the when I walked through the fog to look down at his name. And in the time that I looked down at this guy's name and went, oh, a demi-human, I'll probably stumble quite a bit. By the time that thought had gone through my head, he had already leaped into the air, slashed down, and one-shot me. So, while he isn't particularly difficult after you avoid his absolutely absurd one-shot doorway entry, yeah, he's not that bad after that. He does get stumbled very easily. He can be a little bit awkward. He has like this cool weapon art, very cool sword. Very, very cool sword. He is the sword master after all. But overall, he is not super difficult. If you do get behind him and get a backstab on him, it does a lot of damage because he's a demi-human. You like plunge into them. Overall, pretty average. Just one thing to really watch out for with that crazy weapon art. Divine Beast Dancing Lion. I'm going to put this in very hard. This is the first boss that I fought. Barring maybe one of the mini-bosses. But like maybe I did Curseblade Labyrinth or something first. But this was the first main boss that I fought. And I found this fight to be difficult. I do think this fight has one of the more annoying phases throughout all of the DLC, and that is the RNG of the lightning phase. Not my favorite, having a bunch of lightning spawn on the ground after every single one of his attacks that can catch you out. Even if you roll the other attack, you can just get caught out. If he just nudges you slightly out of position with his body, then he can push you into a lightning bolt. You take some chip damage. You think, oh, I need to heal. You get hit again. The cycle continues. It's a pretty annoying fight. I think this fight is well designed. Other than that, the Frost form, probably the hardest form, even despite the RNG. Wind form was definitely how I ended up beating this fight. I would kind of just dodge the other two forms. He'd go to Wind, and I'd be like, all right, now's my time, because I found Wind very, very simple, very easy to dodge. It's not too much different than Phase 1. One thing to note about this boss, also, that I've seen now that I've done a little bit of co-op, is if you get hit by the bite, and you heal with your Estus, the boss heals as well. I did not experience this in either of my two playthroughs. It was only in co-op, when I saw a host get grabbed, that I realized that this was a thing. So, be wary of the grab. It's pretty slow, it's pretty easy to dodge. There's some delay to his attacks for sure, but I personally like delayed attacks, because my reaction time is doo-doo, so when something has a good delay to it, I get to use my timing sense, which is way better than my reaction time. Which is going to be a factor in a lot of these bosses, because the ones with heavy delays are the ones that I found easier for the most part. Ones with reaction time, less so. But yeah, Divine Beast Dancing Lion, very, very difficult fight. Kind of surprised that it's as early as it is. You don't have to do it, technically. It is an optional fight. Both of them, I suppose. There is a second one. Both of them are optional fights. The only thing you get for doing the first one, I believe, is actually a Spirit Ash. So, it's not super important to do. You could definitely come back to it later in the playthrough, and honestly, I think I would recommend doing it later in the playthrough. He has one attack where he goes up into like a spin and does like a breath attack, round and round and round, and I got caught by that every time, because I was always like, he's ending his combo, I can jump attack, and then I get caught by the breath. I did not remedy that in either of my playthroughs. I'm still going to keep doing that and taking that chip damage because I'm a dingus. The Falling Star Beast buffed. This is just a Falling Star Beast. To be honest, I'm going to put it in hard like the Deathrite Bud. Well, no, I'm going to put it in average. I think it's just a Falling Star Beast. I have fought a lot of Falling Star Beasts because they are a good way to get regular smithing stones in the base game for when you are doing a replay through of a different weapon that you want to try out. So I fought Falling Star Beasts a lot. I didn't find him to be anything new or special, really. but that's just my opinion. I don't think this is really that crazy of a boss placement. I'm just going to put him at average because I feel like he was pretty average in the base game as well. Furnace Golem. There are two places I could put this. First of all, on horseback. Easy. If not on horseback, pretty damn hard is how I feel about it. I fought him with a co-op fight once where I couldn't use the horse and we got annihilated. So he's pretty hard. However, I'm going to go by my experience in my playthrough, and I fought him on horseback and I found him to be pretty simple. Jump the fire stomp. Stay behind his legs, jump the fire stomp. If he jumps with both legs, back up a little bit, and then jump towards him and go back to hitting his legs. Pretty much it. There is another type of Furnace Golem that you can't do that with, but that is not on this boss list, so I guess I'm going to combine them both. There is also the other Furnace Golem that you can defeat with pots. But the pots do such an absurd amount of damage to them when you're above them that I would still put it in easy. You do have to be careful about, you know, big fire wheel attacks and stuff like that, though. But still, relatively easy. Ghost Flame Dragon version 1. I would say version 1 and 2 for me were pretty average. I don't think I found either of them to be that special. Honestly, the only thing that caught me out on these, once again, I fought on horseback and I fought once without horseback, so I could give a good opinion on these. Both of them I feel the same way. I feel like his wings pretty slow initially, and then they, you know, chomp the wings. Nothing too crazy. The only thing that I found difficult about this fight was the Ghost Flame Stomp. And that's because I have got into the mindset of stomps not being scary from the base game dragons, so I did not react super well to the stomp actually having a lot of damage with the Ghost Flame tied to it. That was pretty much the one attack that I found to be actually difficult, and I did not dodge that attack well because my mindset was always, ooh, opening at the other leg while he's stomping with the left leg, and that's not what happens, you get caught out. Golden Hippo. I found very easy. I found this boss very, very easy. I've done this fight 3 times now. Once in co-op, twice solo. And every single time, I have not had trouble with this boss. I think this is the boss that I find very, very easy because a lot of his attacks are pretty delayed. He takes a while to chomp. He takes a while to charge up for his bite. He takes a while to do a lot of his attacks. And I feel like I am a better player when it comes to timing than I am to reaction time. So I really liked this fight. I think that the only attack to watch out for this fight is when he curls up into a ball and shoots all the spikes out. That's pretty much the only attack that I think has any kind of difficulty. If you just stay at his head, he only really does bites over and over for the most part, and it's really not that scary of a fight. I found that fight to be pretty easy. Jagged Peak Drake. This is a regular dragon. Next. The Lamenter. The Lamenter. This... Alright. Someone is going to have to explain to me who the hell thought this was a good idea. So my first time fighting him, I would have put him here. I would have put him here. He is a trash enemy. He dies. Like, he does absolutely nothing. Because I did not know his mechanic until I went in for the second playthrough, and I actually sat down and went, I'm going to relax, I'm going to let him hit me, and try and figure out how he is possibly meant to kill you, because I see all these bloodstains in the room, right? I could see all of the bloodstains across the room, and I was like, there's got to be some way these people are dying to this idiot, and I don't get it. So, just in case anyone doesn't know the mechanic behind Lamenter, if you don't kill his clones before you do enough damage to him, he'll put little skulls beside you. And those skulls stack up, and if he gets enough of them beside you, he will insta-kill you. I did not know this. I just thought it would be easier to get rid of the clones because they were knocking me around. So I always killed the clones first on my first playthrough, and it was only in the second playthrough where I was trying to figure out how people were dying that I found out how. So, take out the clones first. If you hit one and see that the health bar goes down, go to the next one. That's the entire fight. Very, very easy fight. But I could see a couple people not realizing the mechanic, and getting caught out with that at least once or twice. But yeah, I had to really sit down and try and figure out the mechanic, because also it's pretty easy to kill him without even knowing the mechanic that he does. So I am putting him in the trash tier. Mesmer the Impaler. I love this fight. This is probably... Thinking. This is my favorite fight in the DLC. This is my favorite fight. He is a hard fight. He is. I'll give him that. For me, I was keeping track. I have a full notepad of what I was doing when I was going through the base game. I was writing down notes of like every elevator that I went through so that I could explore everything, but he took me 15 attempts, which is a lot of attempts for someone with 1,000 hours in Elden Ring. He is rude. He attacks you right off the bat. It's got like a lot of roll catches in the fight. Personally, I don't mind roll catches. I think roll catches in a lot of situations are good because they force the player to not spam roll, and I'm not a spam roller. I am a very patient type of player. I really enjoyed this fight. 4 of my deaths in Mesmer were entirely to the grab, because at this point in the game, the grab was one-shotting me. Alright? I thought it was going to be like Millennia's grab. I assumed that this fight was the fight that they were talking about that was going to be on par with Millennia. I knew that I had got to it early, but I persevered anyway because I was finding the fight fun to learn. I thought the grab was like a guaranteed one-shot like Millennia, so I didn't think any more of it. Now I understand if I had got more blessings, the grab wouldn't have done as much damage. It's not a guaranteed one-shot. I could have came here a little bit later and been a more appropriately leveled person for the fight. But still, I had a lot of fun with it. This was also pre the patch, so when, you know, level 6 blessings were even weaker, as they are now a lot stronger in the latest patch. But yeah, level 6 blessings, I would recommend being 10, at least. I'd recommend being blessing level 10 for this fight if I had to give advice. He is a very cool fight, though. He has a lot of combos. He has a lot to learn. He has a very cool phase 2, and I am overall thinking that this fight is my favorite in the DLC. So, if I had to give any tips, I would say roll aggressively. Do not roll backwards. He has a spear. Spears have long reach. You will get caught out on the spear. Roll aggressively. Learn what he's doing in combos. Learn ends of combos. If he goes into the air, he has 2 things he can do when he goes into the air. He can do a big fire spin while wield, which is not the scary one, or he can do like an uppercut type of fire attack that takes him into the air, which then he goes into a bunch of fire jabs, roll into the fire jabs, keep rolling, and then you don't have to worry about timing like his big slam down into the spear explosion upwards. That combo was one of my favorite things to dodge in the entire DLC, actually. I felt like a god dodging that, and it was a lot of fun. I know I could time the dodges at the end to get a damage opportunity, but honestly, I was just having fun dodging him. Phase 2, less enjoyable. Definitely less enjoyable when he does the snake things. However, I would say that Phase 2, in my experience, was arguably easier than Phase 1. And this is probably not a common opinion, but I found the snake bites to be pretty well telegraphed. The camera can freak out a little bit. It can freak out a little bit, but I didn't think it was bad or anything. It reminded me a lot of, you know, Rykard in the base game with the snake bites, honestly, with like the free snake chomps and stuff. So, yeah, a good fight. I think it's very fair. I think it's definitely intended to be done a little bit later than when I did it as well. I'm looking forward to refighting him. Very good fight. The Mother of Fingers. See, this is one that I find a little bit tougher to place because I came here pretty much at the end of my game playthrough. I did not do this until I was probably blessing level 16 or something, so I was very high level for the fight, I feel. And I've also only done this fight once so far, actually. So, my opinion on this fight is that it was very, very, very easy. This may not be a common opinion, but I didn't really see much of Phase 2. I found her to take an absurd amount of damage to the front, so I never hit her anywhere else. I stayed directly in front of the Mother of Fingers the entire time. The only thing I really had to worry about dodging was a bunch of angry mommy slams is what we're going to call these attacks. Just mommy slams on the ground and a couple of beam fires. And that's about all I saw. So there's definitely attacks that I want to do in co-op, and I can definitely get a better opinion of. This tier list is all subject to change, by the way. This is only a week in. I'm going to come back and fight this thing on my Rune Level 1 playthrough, and it's going to mess me up. I know it. But at the moment, pretty easy fight, in my opinion. Midra. Midra, very cool fight. So well telegraphed. Incredibly good design. Super cool fight. It's just not that hard. I first tried this fight, I had more trouble getting to the mansion where Midra is than I did have in the fight. Parrying, for anyone that doesn't know, you can parry the little spooky boys outside the mansion. They drop items. I spent a lot of time parrying those goofballs, and I died to those like a good 8 times. And Midra, I've not died to. I would say that he is a very, very well telegraphed swordsman. For me, I was expecting a lot more frenzy spells. I know he has some. He can do his frenzy burst where he goes. Yeah, if only he made that noise alongside it. He can go into the big ball and do like the full explosion onto the ground. You can run away from the explosion though. That was all I did. I just ran away and it was fine. And then he went back to doing sword swings at me. And I found the sword swings to be so well telegraphed that I felt like I could dodge them straight off the bat. And I would say it was a great fight. I would not say it is difficult. I would say if I was to come into this fight again with a different build, maybe it would be different. Maybe if I had that earlier, because like the Mother of Fingers, I came here pretty late. I had probably 14 or 15 on my Blessing level. Pretty solid fight, pretty easy. The Putrescent Knight might have my favorite combo to dodge in the entire game, actually. The combo where the Putrescent Knight summons his horse in the middle of it. He does like 3 big weapon chunk downs, then he does like a spin off into the distance. Horse comes at you, you dodge the horse, he spins at you again, brings the horse back up, spins at you again. That combo is definitely one of my favorite combos in all of Elden Ring. It is so satisfying to dodge, requires a bit of positioning. I definitely got hit by it the first time. I was like, oh my god, what is the horse doing? And that was funny in its own. This fight probably took me, in fact I wrote it down because I have it all. This took me 5 attempts. 5 attempts, but by my 5th attempt, I only used 1 heal to get my victory. So, very fair, very telegraphed. I don't know if you can horse in the fight. I didn't horse in the fight. I don't know if that's something you can do. He is mounted. Gaius was mounted. Maybe it was something you could have done. I never tested, actually, now that I think about it. But I would say he is one of the more enjoyable fights. I enjoyed jumping over all of the flames in Phase 2, and overall, I would say he's hard. He's a hard fight. He's a hard fight. I could see some people not getting to grips with his long combo. He's also a hard fight because he can be very difficult to punish as a melee person. If you are going in there with a short range weapon, like a fist weapon, I imagine that fight is a nightmare. I was using the Nagakiba, quality Nagakiba, which has a lot of range to it. I could running poke him after a lot of his combos. So I feel like I did have an advantage there, which some other melee users might not. So maybe if I had been using a different weapon type, he might have been buffed up. But also, I feel like if I had been using spells, I would have put him in average because he would have been even easier to punish. So, it is what it is. Alright, so I'm going to ramble a bit here. Pain in the ass. This fight is one of the least enjoyable fights I've ever experienced in a FromSoft game. I don't think the fight itself is super difficult. I don't. This is definitely the fight that took me the most attempts out of every single Elden Ring boss, possibly any FromSoft boss, maybe more than Ishin in Sekiro. This fight sucks. Phase 1, beautiful. I loved Phase 1. Out of all of my attempts, which I'll get to in a moment, only 2 of my deaths were to Phase 1, which is when I was initially learning. Phase 2, however, this stupid triple brother incestuous pile of dog shit is one of the most infuriating things to fight that I've ever experienced in my life. I hated it, as you may have guessed from the previous statement. I do not like Radamog Keller, official name. This fight has so many blinding lights. That's my main issue. It is so cluttered. There is so much bright light stuff in this fight that it is such a pain. There is very, 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 very many opportunities to dodge the attacks. You can dodge most attacks in this fight by just rolling forwards and left. You can. And you will dodge the attack, and you will dodge the stupid Holy Afterglow after it. That's fine. That's fine. But it is annoying. There is definitely a comparison of this boss and Millennia with some of the attacks that feel a little bit stupid. However, just like Millennia, you can figure out strategy. Just like with Millennia's Waterfowl, where for the first two hits of the Waterfowl, you can essentially just run away. With this guy's big attack, or at least the one that I would call the big attack, you can run away. When he initially goes into this phase, you can back up, you can just get out of there, and you will dodge the attack just fine. Likewise, when he does his stupid meteor pull up and he starts to fire all the meteors down in phase 2, you can run away, slightly sidestep at the end, keep running back, you'll dodge pretty much everything other than the final swipe where he goes into his big explosion. And a lot of his combos are the same as in phase 1. It's just so hard to see. So, how I ended up beating this boss, this is a little bit goofy. I beat him on my 26th attempt, which for me is an absurd amount of attempts. It is over double what took me the second most attempts. Mesmer was my second hardest fight, who took me 15. This one took me 26 attempts. Using a shield to learn things in phase 1, which was pretty safe. And in my final attempt, I had the following. I put the shield away, and I took out the Hand of Millennia in my offhand so that I could jump attack with the Nagakiba and the Hand of Millennia, so I could get as much damage off as possible in the few damage opportunities that there were. I had Morgoth's Great Rune active, Consumable Golden Vow, Boiled Crab, Flame Grant Me Strength were all active for this fight. As the fight went on, I was also using the weapon art on my Nagakiba, the Poison Bloom blooms twice, or whatever it's called. The Poison Rot blooms twice, whatever that is. So he was also getting rotted occasionally. Not the strong rot like the Dragon Breath, but it did still do 10 to 15% of his health passively. And that procced once in phase 1 and once in phase 2. So that also had an impact. I also used all 14 of my maxed out heals and my 2 Blessings of Marika on my winning attempt. So I really exhausted all of my supplies. If I didn't win on that attempt, I might still be doing this fight to this day. But also, the thing that helped the most, and this is where we get a little bit silly, the thing that helped the most was I unironically got out my glasses, my sunglasses that I got when I was 10, just so I could see his swords during the fight through all of the holy glows. I turned my screen brightness down in-game, and I turned my monitor brightness down, and I wore my sunglasses, and I beat the fight. So if you want my advice for how to beat that fight with all of the stupid holy clutter, get some sunglasses. It's such a stupid way to do it, but my second attempt using sunglasses, I won. Again, I used a lot of supplies. It was not a pretty fight. I would like to never see this asshole again. But yeah, he is definitely the toughest fight in the DLC. I would say he was harder than Millennia. Funnily enough, my first try on Millennia, I won. It was the build. It was the build against Millennia that made me win first time. I was doing a full jump attack with 2 Colossal Swords build, and Millennia staggers real easy. So my first time against Millennia was very silly. In fact, I was laughing like crazy that anyone was calling it difficult. Now that I fought Millennia with different builds, I understand. But I do think that this fight is way tougher than Millennia. I've heard stories that parrying is the way to go. I don't really parry until attempt number 25 on a lot of bosses, just because parrying isn't my thing. Apparently parrying is the way to go, so that is something to look into if you are struggling with Radahn, the consort of Miquella. Right, we have 2 rune bears down here. I kind of want to do both of these at the same time, because to be honest, the only difference between them is I think one roars and one doesn't. I don't know the names of them, but I found them pretty much both the same. I found them both to be average. I think they both killed me once. And that's just because, Rune Bear. You know, I liked when they used their spells, because their spells were easier to dodge than their stupid Rune Bear instant charge. That's about it. It's hard to heal against them as well. They're very aggressive. They stay at you. The Red Bear, I barely remember this fight. I did not find it difficult. I feel like I just slapped him. I barely remember anything. I'm pretty sure this was one of the fights that I ended up doing quite late into the playthrough because I think I missed him for a while and was like, hey, wait, I haven't been over here in my notes. And I went back and absolutely destroyed him, if he's where I think he was. He's definitely one of the Mausoleum boys. Might be the northern one, actually. Maybe this one was just late game. Either way, I think I destroyed him. Relana. This is a long tier list, by the way. I didn't know this was going to be this long. Relana is very hard. Relana is a very hard fight. Relana I beat on my 5th attempt. However, I did not learn the fight. I learned specific moves of the fight, like the Twin Moon, the Carrion Grandeur attack, and the double swish swish. And I got very lucky on my 5th attempt where she did a lot of those for the most part, and I just rolled away for the rest. So I have not perfected this fight, which is why I'm putting it in very hard, despite having beaten it on my 5th attempt. I think this fight is one that I am going to possibly move to this tier once I do my Rune Level 1 run, because she does a lot of chip damage, where you can't roll her attacks the way that you think you would be able to. They're definitely all rollable, and you can avoid damage perfectly through the fight. However, she's very quick. Those swords come out very quickly. There's a bit of reaction time to it. I will say, on her phase transition, if anyone wants a little bit of advice that I did pick up, she doesn't do the magic spam after her phase transition where she would normally do 2 diagonal slices, 2 horizontal slices, and then a diagonal slice. That doesn't happen if you stay close to her in her phase transition. Instead, she'll do the fire weapon art, which is really easy to dodge. You can just spam roll out and be fine, and then you don't have to worry about the magic thing, which tends to catch you on the 4th horizontal swipe if you're just rolling it. So, a little bit of advice there. Romina, Saint of the Badu. Centipede Tail, Scorpion Tail, Flower Rot Lady was really, really easy for me. I beat her first try. I did not use all my heals. I felt like all I did was stay close to her body, and that was that. I feel like it was a very disappointing fight for what was realistically my second to last fight, as I didn't end up going here until my second to last boss. Because I didn't even do this on purpose, by the way. I did play the entire playthrough blind. I just had the mindset of, I'm going to explore things before I do things that look important. And I went to the top left area last. So, possibly just because I did it last, that I had, you know, pretty much maxed out blessing level. I was like blessing level 18 or something at this point for this fight, which was obviously very high. But for the most part, I jump attacked her body and felt like a lot of her attacks missed me. I feel like she could do with some hitbox correction, she could do with some aiming correction. A lot of her sweeps with her weapon tend to go over you. I felt like sometimes the flowers were like directly on top of me when they explode, and they didn't hit me. So, I'll possibly have a different experience in co-op, where maybe she'll be flailing around a bit more. But in single player, at very least, I found her to be a pretty easy fight. The Skadoosh Tree Avatar. I know it's called Shadow, it's the realm of Shadow, but still it's funny to call it the Skadoosh Tree. The Skadoosh Tree Avatar is one of my favorite fights. I love this fight. I don't think it's hard. I don't think it's a hard fight. It's it's one that in the moment infuriated me greatly. It is definitely not a fun thing to learn in phase 3. Learning stuff in phase 1, if you die, you go, whatever, cool, let's go again, I've got stuff to learn. If you die for the first time in phase 3, and you're like, this stupid sunflower son of a bitch really has a 3rd phase, that can tilt you, and I do think I got tilted. I died to this guy 3 times, and 1 on my 4th attempt, and all of my deaths were to the double explosion in phase 3 that I tried to roll and got caught out on. Got caught in being after the end of a roll and took the counter damage and got one shot. Because I came here, again, pretty early. This was one of the earlier fights that I did. I was getting one shot by the big explosion. I was like, it makes sense that that explodes because, you know, a lot of damage, big move. probably pretty easy to dodge, is what I was thinking at the time. You can just outrange it. You can just run away, but you do lose out on a very big damage opportunity. What I ended up doing was I blocked it. Just that simple. I just pulled out a shield. I went, okay, he's starting to do it. I quickly opened my inventory after, you know, I saw him start to do it. I literally just went down to my blue gold kite shield, which I was using up to that point. I swapped it to the one below it, which for me was the Crucible Knight shield, and I blocked it. That was it. I don't have much more to say about that. I'm still interested in trying to learn to roll that attack, but it can be outranged, so you can always just run away, or you can just block it. There are options for sure. Tree Sentinel is just Tree Sentinel. There's nothing more to it. That's it. It's just Tree Sentinel. Rakshasa, the Weed Cutter guy. I remember this fight. I would say he's pretty easy. His weapon art combo can catch you out and can do a lot of damage. I don't think I died to him. I do think that there were times where I was like, oh my god, stop. Where he was like comboing me for a bit, just full whooshing across the arena. But he does tend to get stuck into it a lot, and he can really get stuck into it, and he only starts to use Weed Cutter over and over again, and you can definitely exploit that, and, you know, use that time to heal or throw something at him. I think I actually, this is probably the fight where I started messing around with pots. I think I threw some hefty fire pots at him while he was weed cuttering around the arena. So I think I had a fun time with this fight, and yeah. Also, if you have like a greatsword or something, I'm sure he just stumbles over because he's a katana boy. Very cool armor set though, that increases your damage that you do. And then finally, after this long tier list, we have Jory the Elder Inquisitor, which leads to Midra. This fight, hard fight. Very spammy, very spammy. Lots of summons, big boy summon. Big boy hits hard. He will jump on you and do a lot of your health. I'm not going to put it higher than hard. The only reason it's hard is because I am a disgusting toxic person that refuses to use spirit summons. I'm sure if you use spirit summons, this fight gets a lot more of an even playing ground, and it's probably a lot easier. You don't have to worry about quite as many attacks. Also, it was only on like my second attempt where I figured out you could just stance break summons and they disappear. I was just assuming that they would be there, so I tried to focus the boss. I would recommend dealing with the summons, then focusing the boss. Can be backstabbed, and overall, nothing too crazy when you're close. A little bit of chip damage when they teleport away, but not too hard of a fight. Overall, respectable. Definitely easier if you're not like me and you're willing to use spirit summons and stuff like that. But that is the tier list. All of this, very subject to change. I am interested in doing a enjoyment tier list, because some of this would be messed around a bit in an enjoyment tier list. So there might be some more Elden Ring tier list stuff coming out to do with Shadow of the Erdtree, because I am still going to keep playing it, because it is one of my comfort games that I like to play whenever I get a spare moment. So I am interested in knowing if there are any of these bosses, like the Mother of Fingers, or, you know, the Avatar, or the Saint of Blood, that other people found especially difficult because they went there earlier than I did, and they think that those fights have, you know, crazy things that can happen to you if you are a lower level and you don't just bully them. And I'm also interested in if other people had an easier time with some fights like Bale, because I went to Bale before the Mother of Fingers, before Raminia, before like quite a lot of these things. So yeah, overall, that is my opinions. Opinions are always subjective. If you guys have enjoyed this rather random Elden Ring tier list, I know, but I did just want to talk about Elden Ring for a bit of fun. If you guys have enjoyed, leave a like down below, hit that subscribe button, and without further ado,